Welcome to Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. Today, my dear friends and subscribers and visitors to my channel, I would like to talk about latest events in Russia. And the title of my presentation is Putin's Message to the Russians. The reason for that is that recently in Western media, there were lots of reports about growing discontent in Russia, about the drone strikes that Russian anti-air defense could not stop, about the acts of Ukrainian successful launching of various kinds of attacks on Russian oil facilities and St. Petersburg Forum and on the bus, and then on Sevastopol, the museum devoted to the Crimean War of 1853, when Britain and France sent expeditionary force invading invading Crimea. So all of these reports were essentially boiling down to the message to the Western audience that Ukraine is winning, that Russia is in crisis, that there could be an upheaval that would remove Putin, and all kinds of ridiculous fantasies, wet dreams of Zelensky, as I would put it. But all of that was just going on, especially very, very strong after the visit to London of Mr. Zelensky, and one more time their promises of support and the more drones and so on by Starmer and Merz and Macron. Now, this is the background. This is why I'm trying to see how President Putin responded to all this. And he did respond. And there were two very important meetings where one could formulate what he has done is a response to these claims in a message to the Russians. In fact, his audience seems to be deliberately chosen to be not Western ambassadors, not foreign journalists to whom he spoke in St. Petersburg, but to the Russian public. And the message is quite significant. It does reveal what Putin is up to, what his thinking is about the future of the war, the future of negotiations, and the future of these regions of Donbass where the action takes place now. So there were two important meetings, and I'll speak about each one after another. The first one was on the 12th of June, which happens to be the day of Russia, or the day of Russian unity. It'd take a long time for me to explain this holiday. It started in 1990 when Yeltsin was just elected to head the legislature of a Russian Soviet Socialist Republic, at that time still in the Soviet Union, and that declaration of Russian sovereignty at that time nobody took seriously. It really was a kind of a defiance vis-a-vis Gorbachev. Now, I could go on and on about this, but the point is now the essence of this holiday, of this national day, is completely changed, and it is perceived pretty much as a day to be proud of Russia and of Russia's accomplishments. And Putin chose that day to speak to the officers and soldiers and military personnel taking part in the special military operation. So this was a kind of a public relations, if you want, campaign. But he spoke and said many important things. And this is why it needs to be taken note of. It's not just public relations. He did give all kinds of military awards, and he spoke all kinds of important encouragement words, elevating the prestige and the status of those who are fighting in the special military operations. But of this substance, what I think is quite important is that he acknowledged that the drone problem, Ukrainian drones hitting Russian targets, inside Russia is a problem. And a problem that cannot be resolved immediately. And he spoke about the measures that are being undertaken to essentially close the gaps in the early warning systems. But more importantly, and that is the development of a new satellite system that is now in action, that is being developed. It's called Rassvet, which is dawn. And when it is completed, it will replace the Starlink and Musk's satellites, and that would mean that Russia would have a totally independent coverage, satellite coverage, that would make it quite more efficient in identifying flying objects, small ones. The missiles are quite well seen by radars and others equipment today, but that would be specifically to address the issue of small flying objects like drones, or as one of my viewers put it, toy airplanes. So this was the message. Drones are a problem, but we're working on it. Hold on, brothers, and keep on fighting. Now, the message, of course, to the army was quite significant, because it actually meant quite explicitly there will not be any pause, there will not be any ceasefire, there will be an advancement that would be speeded up. He kept on speaking about the advances of the Russians on the front line, and it so happened that exactly at that time, of the Konstantinovka fortress was taken, which is one of the three remaining fortresses in Donbass, in Donetsk province. The remaining two would be Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. So this was quite important as a message to the army and to the Russian people in regard to Zelensky's drones hitting targets in Russia. The second meeting would probably be even more important, because it revealed Russia's plans for the future. And this was not just the future or just for Russia, but he spoke about Novorossiya. Novorossiya translates as New Russia, but I have to explain that when a Russian person hears the word Novorossiya, that immediately is associated with a map, and the map is of the Russian territories that became Russian in 18th century, when Catherine II extended Russian border in what today is south of Russia and Ukraine. Novorossiya for Russians means Odessa, including Odessa, and including Kharkov. This is an area of ethnic Russians living in those territories that were at some point in 2022 given to Ukraine Soviet Socialist Republic. The fact that Putin spoke about Zaporozhye and Kherson and Novorossiya suggests that this area, which he defined as historically Russian, where our people live there, this is a quite open admission that all of Novorossiya may be in the plans for continued Russian advance. But he didn't say it openly, so this is still a conjecture. But what he did say absolutely openly, to remove any doubt about this, is that Zaporozhye province and Kherson province are Russian. And any speculation that this conflict might be frozen along the lines that was implied by Trump in the Anchorage meeting, and supposedly Putin had agreed to stop the conflict along the current front line in Zaporozhye. Now, all of this now is clearly revealed by Mr. Putin that this is not the case. The entire Zaporozhye and Kherson provinces are part of the Russian Federation by constitution, and the special military operation will continue until these are cleared of the Ukrainian forces. So this is very important statement that is clearly defining at least these two provinces. What he also said is quite important is the plan for 2030, that a plan of economic development of what they call new Russian territories. And the plan is very detailed about and I'm not going to bother you with figures, but it has to do with the construction of apartment buildings and hospitals and kindergartens and schools and the entire infrastructure and restoration of roads and bridges and rail lines and the construction of new ones. In other words, it was a very, very well worked out, specific plan with figures and numbers of the reconstruction of the war-torn area of Donbass and Novorossiya that Putin presented to the public. The message to the Russian people, and especially to people in that area, is that everything will be restored. There will be the same standard of living there as in the rest of Russia. What's also important is that this is also a message to those residents of these territories that have left to Ukraine or to Europe. Anybody who had a residence in these territories as of 2022 is eligible to claim Russian citizenship and return to these territories. And in fact, some reports suggest that of those residents of Donbass who are now in Europe as Ukrainian refugees, many of them show up at Russian consulates and go through the procedure of coming back to Donbass and gaining their place that they abandoned back again. So this is the important message of economic reconstruction. So finally, to conclude, because some of my critics on this channel say that I just report what Putin said and do not provide an analysis. So here's my analysis. I think the analysis boils down to a very important conclusion. The war will continue. There will not be any ceasefire. There will not be any freezing of the conflict along the current front lines. The special military operations will continue until the liberation of Zaporozhye, Kherson, and this is already not as clear, whatever is defined by the term Novorossiya. So in other words, Putin presented himself now clearly to be seen and perceived as a war leader, not as some kind of a wimp or some kind of a seeking negotiated settlement with Trump or anybody else. That is the message, and that I think is an important one, showing his frame of mind and where things are likely to go. This is all for the moment, and I would like to report to you that I have many playlists, history of Russia, the history of Soviet Russia, post-Soviet history, and what I've done is converted many of these playlists, in fact all of them, into audio file, which is podcast. So if you want to listen to those, and especially if you want to go back to some historical ones, I have a playlist on war in Ukraine, or in post-Soviet Russia, or a Russia under the communist regime, about Lenin and Stalin, and about the Great Terror and the kulaks and many other important topics. Now you can listen to those as a podcast in YouTube Music. So that's it for today. I will see you very soon with another edition of Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. Goodbye.